All right. So for now, what I would like to do is I'd like to kind of explore SQL a little bit more, kind of out in the wild, as it were. Before I get started, does anybody not have Postgres installed on their computer right now?
I think there was some error. Yeah, I was like,
yeah, that was way back in Install Fest, I remember. So if you don't, please check, because that's what we're gonna be using. And I know for the we're gonna have some outside instructors come in tomorrow for a workshop, and they're gonna be working with Postgres, so you're gonna need that. And if you find you don't have Postgres, to come talk to me or Tom, and we'll help you get that sorted out. So I'd like to introduce you to another piece of software, though. There's an app you can download called Postico. It's got a little elephant logo. It's very cute. So Postico allows you to it gives you a visual interface that you can use to connect with a Postgres SQL database on your computer. So I can connect to my database here, and I have created two tables, apple trees and apples. Look familiar? And we can actually take a look at these. So I've got apples have an ID, a variety, a diameter, and a tree ID. It's a tree that can grow multiple types of apples, who knew? And apple trees have just an ID, an age, a height, and whether or not they're alive, true or false. And this is kind of cool. So you can this software allows you to edit things. So I can say, ID is an integer, age is an integer, height is an integer, alive is a Boolean. You can set a default value, constraints like not null or primary key. And you can add columns. You can also add rows. So we can add another one by default, do that. And we could say this one is 2 years old and has a height of 11 feet or something. Hit save changes. And now it's going to be in our database. So it's very useful. It's very useful for understanding your database, but it also allows you to gives you a SQL interface you can use, like so. So I already kind of had typed one in here. I said select all from apples where variety equals Gala. So hit execute statement, gives me all the Gala apples. Okay, so how would I get? So kind of like let's work together on this a little bit. Let's say I only want the diameter. Let me do this. I want all the records from apples that have a diameter greater than 5. What would my command be for that? Select. Yep. So first be a select, and I want to get all the records, and so I use the star from apples, and then the operator I need to use to narrow it down is which one? And I said, the diameter has to be greater than 5. Yep. And so SQL doesn't have any constraints about like line breaks or anything like that. So it's good practice to put to end them with a semicolon to show this is the end of this query period. Oh, I did it backwards. So it gives me the ID, the variety, the diameter, and the tree ID. Cool. All right. Now let's say I want to only get the let's do from apple trees. Let's say I wanted to create a new apple tree. What's my first command? Let's say, I heard someone from remote, didn't quite catch that. Someone talk? Did I just imagine that? Insert? Yep, insert into apple trees. And then what's the next step?
parentheses here, the column heading.
Yeah, we can always look it up if we all seem unsure and we don't want to mess this up necessarily. So I'm gonna take a look at our slide deck here actually, because that has all of the syntax we need. Select, where, insert, aha. So, yep, so we just do the values, that's correct, or the column names. So, in this case, what is an apple, does anyone remember what we put for apple trees, what they needed? Yeah, ID, and there was also age and height. So, I'd like to try something. I'm not sure if it'll work. Let's just do the age and the height. So apple tree's height, and then we say values. We could say 4 and 22. Let's see what happens if I execute this statement. Uh-oh. So what happened here?
So the default was like 1 for ID, so we already had 1.
Yep.
So try to assign it the key of 1. There's already something in that row.
Yeah, so I got to put an ID. So we could say an ID of, I know there, so let's do 3. Insert 0, 1. So I don't know if that worked. So let's do a select all from apple trees and see what happens. Yep, there it is. And notice we didn't specify whether the alive was true or false, but we set when I set up my database, I set it a default value of true. Cool. What questions do you have so far about kind of how this is working? Does anyone have any SQL queries that SQL type of queries that they would like to explore or understand a little bit better?
Are we going to get into how those defaults are defined and the database setup?
Yeah, we can talk a bit about that. So he was asking if we, about creating default values and stuff like that when we set up the database. So actually, I can kind of, so this, Postigo is a cool way of doing this kind of help us. So I'm going to make a new table. We can call it orchards. And it already comes with an ID. Type is serial, default, no default. So I think that's why it wasn't updating the ID automatically, is I set the ID to an integer instead of serial. And if I type here, it'll give me a preview of what command it's actually going to be translated into. So it gives me create table public.orchards. ID is serial, primary key is ID. So what other things should what other columns should our orchard have? Could be anything.
Diameter.
Diameter, or maybe like area, if it's an entire orchard. Make that an integer. If we want to give it a default thing, so I believe we would want to say the default, maybe it can't be less than, like the default is 1 if you don't change anything. Click on SQL preview. So it's, we give it different column names. Area is integer, default 1. And if we wanted to give, like maybe give it a name, for example, that's, we can give that do maybe varchar 255. And maybe we want to add a constraint, like it has to be unique, and it can't be null. So you can't leave it blank. It has to have a name. We check out our preview again. We have create table, public orchards, ID serial. name varchar not null, and then we have to specify down here which one is unique name. So it says drag pop over to, oh, we can actually detach it. That's cool. So this allows us to actually see, this constructs the SQL for us, so we can see what's happening. But now we can see when you create a table, you say create table, the name of it, all of the, you'd say what the key name is and what the what type of data type it is. You'd say which one is the primary key. So the primary key is usually, it's almost always the ID number. And it's always going to be something like, this is the thing that has to be unique. It's the primary identifier. And when we try to connect it with foreign keys, that's how we use it. And then we can specify things like name has to be unique. Any questions about what's happening here? What's happened, what this query does? Seems pretty straightforward. Yes, no? Right now, yes. Yeah. In fact, so how about, let's try doing this on our own. So we want to create table, orchards, or we can, I know they said public.orchards, so we can do it that way just in case. Make sure it's all kind of in the same thing. And I've already forgotten the rest of how the rest of it looked like, so let's look it up. W3 School's SQL thing is it's a lifesaver, I'm telling you that. Okay, so then we just do parentheses, column 1, and data type. Cool. And we can put it on multiple lines just to make it more readable. So we can say ID. And is it just, yep, ID is serial. Name is varchar 255. We could say not null. And then area, integer, default 1, I believe. Let's try executing the statement. Okay, create table. That's a good sign. If I do just select all from orchards, there's nothing there, but we've got ID, name, and area. And if we try to create a new one, we could say insert into orchards, name, area, values. Got it. Noah's apples, area 12. Interesting. So it says column Noah's apples does not exist. But I thought this was the column. So that's something we're going to have to figure out. Why did we get column, the column does not exist when it should be that? Let's check if we're doing it right. SQL insert into. Insert to orchards, table name, column 1, values, value, value.
How about putting a comment for Noah for auto include
Like this? Is that what you mean? Okay.
What's name blue there? Is that
That's a good question. I wonder if name is some kind of keyword, but yeah, it might.
it's trying to do some what does it show? Because you can show what the it says the x%.
Interesting. Also interesting is that the database is not, the table is not here. It looks like it didn't get completely saved. I think it doesn't get saved completely unless you do it through their UI. So, yeah, I'm like, I'd like to Google for this issue. I'm just wondering.
So if we could just select that table and see what it does.
Is it your semicolon or is it regular?
Yeah, there is a free version of Postigo. Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, a semicolon or is it?
You could try adding a semicolon. Maybe that's messing us up. Nope.
Thinks that the column is called noise.
Yeah.
Not that it's a
Yeah.
point dimension, so it's the end of the table itself.
It's there. Column value does not exist. See if that should. All right. So they're doing this thing. Well, a column FK numbers ID. So maybe these need to have quotes around them. Let's see if, I don't know why that would give us that particular area, but let's see what happens. Nope. Okay, same thing.
Is it your presence of quotes on the
Uh,
Noah's Ark one?
well,
So
we
it
can,
knows that has to have
Oh, it has
yeah,
to-
it's a
okay.
string, so it has to.
Open orchards table. Take a look at those.
So, yep, ID, name, and area.
Okay, do select name.
Good idea. So you do select name from orchards instead. So we just
That's
get
the
name.
column. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a column. We do. Also, just one thing I'm trying to, you notice I'm doing all my SQL keywords all caps. You don't have to. It's just convention. Search into orchards. Let's see, we just do name.
Oh, yeah, just take values out. Take just values. It should be just values, right?
Just values?
Instead of, yeah, the column name. It should be just values because you can omit the columns if you have everything in order.
I didn't know that. So if I just did it like this,
Yeah, that should work. I should put something in.
all right. So
No. You have to put it in.
Mhm.
Sorry.
you have to still have to put in parentheses.
Yeah.
All right, let's try that. It says column orchard time does not exist. That's interesting. I've never seen this before. All right, let's see. What if I do this with apples though? So I do apples, variety, and just do the variety, and just do, let's get a Fuji apple in there.
So what
Double
do?
quotes.
So do the you have to do the entire line. So that means the ID number, the name, and the value. ID number, the name, and the other column.
So what you're saying is I need to have every single column name?
Yes. Not there. Like you can literally leave that out. And then you would just on there. Yes, on this one.
Mhm.
You can go back. One into the right there.
Mhm.
Since it's auto incrementing, you can do that. Yeah. And then
Right.
go to the next one. Yeah. That, and then you go to the number.
I'm just checking. I just wanted to see what happened.
Comma and whatever value you need after that.
Yeah, I believe it was diameter.
Yeah.
And then,
And then you take off 20, so you're gonna have apples and values. So take everything between apples and values out. That should work.
it seems like the problem is the string. Maybe it is that it's in single quotes.
So single quotes are for strings, double quotes are for database identifiers.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. Good to know. All right, so stuff like that could trip you up.
And will.
And will, yeah. So if I wanted to do Noah's apples with the apostrophe there, and I had single quotes, oh, it's fine. Let's see if there's a way to get around that. Yeah, let's see if backticks work. Or maybe, invalid input syntax for type integer in Noah's apples. So it thinks it's trying to do something else.
Well, yeah, because if you do it like that, you have to put every value.
I don't believe you do. If I specify I'm only doing the name.
Yeah, if you specify it like that between.
Yeah.
You can actually make, well, this is MySQL, use double quote. There's a ANSI standard. You can change it like a settings thing to recognize.
Yeah. So there are other ways that do that. Okay. But in the meantime, I've managed to insert a new apple orchard called Noah's Apples, and I only specified that the variety, the name was Noah's Apples, and it auto-incremented because of that serial data type to give me an ID of 1, and it gave me the default area value of 1. And if I want to update that, say update orchards, I'm going to say area. Let's take a look at exactly how to do updates so I don't mess this up as well. So I need to do set. So I do update orchards, set area equal to 10. And in this case, it would be fine if I didn't have that where because there's only one record. But I want to be specific, so I could say where. I could do by name or I could do by ID. Which one do you guys think is a safer way to do it? Name or ID? Yep. Because as long as it's guaranteed to be unique, then it's a safe way to do it. But if I didn't verify that Noah's Apples has to be unique, which I don't think I did, the name has to be unique, which I don't think I did in this case, then what would happen is I could update a whole bunch of orchards that are also called Noah's Apples, and that is not good. Update 0. I don't know if that's good or bad. It's not an error though. No, it did not work. Let's see if I did this wrong.
There's ID 10.
Oh.
You don't have it.
Good catch, thank you. There we go, update 1, meaning it failed, it passed. So now I should be able to select all from orchards, execute statement, Noah's Apples, so now it has an area of 10. All right, so the last thing I'd kind of like to cover for this a little bit is talking about foreign keys, because that's an important part of how we're going to be handling just how these work. So you notice I've given apples a tree ID that's an integer, and I can add a constraint making this a foreign key. And so foreign key name, I can leave that as automatic. The reference table is going to be apple trees. Reference column is ID, so it's kind of doing this autofill for me. They also have stuff like on delete. So what happens if an apple has a tree ID of 1 and then I delete that tree? We have to decide what happens. So no action means it just leaves it there and it has an ID that points to nothing, or it gets updated automatically to null. I can also do cascade. When a row from the reference table is deleted, all rows referencing it will also be deleted. So if I delete the tree, it'll delete all of the apples associated with it. There's also set null. When a row from the reference table is deleted, the foreign key will be set to null. Let's restrict. Trying to delete the reference row will cause an error immediately, even if the constraint is deferred. So let's say cascade. On update, no action. We can also do cascade. Validation not deferrable. I'm not actually sure what this part means. Well, it's probably fine. All right, and so now now if I do SQL preview again, I've got alter table public apples, add foreign key tree ID, which references public.appletree's ID, on delete cascade, on update cascade. So it's pretty readable now that we know what they're actually doing. So we're altering the table, we're adding a foreign key to an already existing record. It knows we already have tree ID. And we say exactly what it's referencing. And then we say what to do if it's deleted and what to do if it's updated. So now if I go to SQL query. So let's say I wanted all of the apples from tree number 1. How would I do that? So, yep, start with the select. And we can say get all the data, that's fine. From apples. And then to say they all come from tree 1, how do I do that?
Tree ID equals 1.
Exactly. So where tree ID equals 1. So I've got all these things here with the same tree ID. And in this case, this is the same thing as saying, hey, tree 1, give me all of the apples that you have. So we talk about how things interact with each other, how data types interact with one another. And we also often want to know, okay, whose job is it to keep track of the relationship between, say, a tree and its apples? Is it the tree's job to have a whole list of apples, or is it the apple's job to keep track of which tree it has? And we've been doing it usually where the apple tree keeps track, has like an array of all its apples, because when we were working with Python, because that makes sense. That's very Pythonic. The SQL way is when you have a foreign key, and I'm pretty sure we're going to get into this in more detail on another day, but if the relationship between them is what's called one-to-many, meaning one tree has many apples, then it's the many's job to keep track of which tree it's about. The SQL can only keep track of so many data types. It doesn't have a thing for lists. It doesn't have a thing for it doesn't have a thing for dictionaries. It can only do integers and foreign keys and stuff like that. So in this case, it makes a lot more sense for each apple to have a little tag that says, I belong to this tree. And so if the tree ever needs to do that, it can just go to the apples and say, okay, all of you with this ID tag, come with me.
And then if you ever get rid of that tree, then all the apples are with it.
Exactly. So if I do delete from apple trees where ID equals 1, and then do select all from apples, they're all gone because they all belong to that one tree. And that's not always what you'll want to do. Sometimes you want to make sure those records persist, even if they're the foreign key they belong to doesn't. So it's all about which one makes the most sense in the moment. All right, so again, Postico, it's good for messing around with SQL if you just want to get some practice with it. It's also just very good for if you have a PostgreSQL database and you just want to know, wait a second, what's actually in there? It can just give you a visual representation of it. It's a very useful tool to have. Also, another thing, you can mess around with Postgres directly from the command line. There's also a Postgres app you can download that gives you this little elephant status bar here. So that lets you keep track of all your Postgres servers. So I also recommend downloading that as we move forward. So if you look up Postgres app, it should come up. It's a little blue elephant logo. If it's got a blue elephant logo, it's a Postgres thing.
You said it's free?
Postico, don't download it from the App Store. Just Google for Postico, and the first thing that comes up should be the free version. And then the paid version is on the App Store.
My Postgres, when I downloaded it, came with a little thing for a browser-based way to look at it.
Oh, cool. So you're saying is that... Oh, yeah. So there's also something called PT admin that if you download it may come with it as well. Was it PT or PG?
PG.
PG admin.
Yeah.
I was like, PT doesn't sound like a Postgres thing.
It's from enterprisedb.com. So I got my Postgres.
Cool.
Also, you can do brew cask install post-SQL. That will
Oh.
just
Cool. So you can also install it from the command line using brew.
What can we not do with the free version?
Honestly, I think the only. I'm sorry. The only difference I've noticed so far is that the free version keeps on harassing you to buy the paid version.
I mean, all you need is you don't even need post.
Yeah.
It's a good video rep. You can do all. It's nice. You have a bunch of projects with a bunch of databases. Really be able to switch through.
Yeah.
We can see what's going on.
Yeah, and it's got a nice UI, so you can see exactly what the table looks like, which is good. So.
And it took me. I had this downloaded for like over a year, and I didn't even realize that. Oh, I can look at the SQL queries, like raw SQL queries. I'm actually importing stuff. That was really useful.
Okay, cool. Are there any other questions about Postgres, Postico, SQL before we stop lectures for today? Remotes, I haven't heard a lot from you. Anyone have something they need, something they're curious about?
Brian was wanting to know what Tom was saying.
Okay, I'm sorry. I heard two people talking at once, so I couldn't tell who was talking as well. So let's try it again.
I was just wondering what Tom was saying.
Oh, just about Postico. Just the fact that I didn't realize that I've had this downloaded for over a year. When I first downloaded it, I didn't realize that you can actually see the raw SQL queries. And after discovering that, it made a lot of things, like made understanding SQL and just the queries language easier for me.
All right. Was there someone else talking at the same talking as well?
I was just saying Brian wanted to know what Tom was saying.
Awesome. Okay, so in that case, if you go onto the curriculum GitHub repo, there is a whole list of SQL-based challenges that those are going to be your challenges for the next 3 days. So,
SQL basics.
yeah, let me take a look. Put that up on the screen here. Yeah, so SQL Basics is the first one. So this is essentially practicing all of the basic commands. So it has detailed instructions about creating a database, starting a Postgres SQL server. So if you're not sure if you have Postgres on your machine, this is where you're going to find out. So yeah, so this is just kind of covering everything we've covered today in a little more detail and giving you things to do. And then there's things like designing your schema SQL. So these 8 challenges are going to be in the next 3 days. And in this case, the order of them is important because they each build on one another.
Don't think you have to finish all 8 of them today.
Yeah. In fact, we don't expect you to. If you did, we'd be a little concerned. That's a lot. Okay, cool. All right. Thank you, guys. Yeah, in that case, take a quick break, and then you can get started.